start with Apple. We know that this is one of Paul's top spots in terms of the investment space. Apple, as we know, sells consumer electronics, computer software, and personal computers.
Indeed, the world's most valuable company. And I guess the point I'm making here is that this is actually, at the end of the day, the most aspirational personal possession that a lot of people have. And I mean, this is an iPhone 7, but the key issue for Apple is whether the next generation of iPhones will look somewhat different and therefore require everybody to rush out and buy one.
Market cap here, $716.9 billion, a PE of 16.4, dividend yield of 1.7%. There is the share price graph. Mduduzi, can't argue with that graph.
Yeah, I think, Apple's downfall since the current CEO took over from Steve Jobs has been investor expectation. And what I mean by that is people expecting them to continuously give us something new. They haven't lived up to that, but it doesn't mean that they're not still a fantastic company. If you look at the fundamentals, they're very good. You don't become the #1 company in the world by accident. Still very highly profitable. Got a gross margin of over 35%. Huge cash flows, depending who you ask, anywhere between $100 billion US to about 240 billion. And what I really like about them is they've used their cash reserves in their buyback program. So basically what they're doing is when they have slow quarters, they're using their cash reserves to make sure that the investors still earn some sort of dividend. So this is a company that faces, for me, minimal risk, even if they are not continuing to live up to that innovation tag, if I can put it that way. And if you look at the PE ratio compared to the S&P 500, it's still relatively cheap, but I say relatively cheap.
Gross margins, 35%.
Tremendous.
Exactly, yeah.
So look, I think that's fair because Mduduzi is making the point that somehow people thought that Tim Cook would be similarly innovative and by now we'd have a flying car and toaster that actually...
Instead we've got the iPhone 7.
Which, but the fact is they continue to sell an enormous number of these. The replacement cycle has remained good, which means people that have one want a new one and people who don't have one want one. I think the key issue really is long term, does the innovation in the iPhone, is that enough? I think that's enough to justify the current share price based on its price to earnings ratio.
Well, you would, because you're a shareholder.
Correct. So
Apple.
maybe they're going to go and do something like, bring out the Apple car or something next, buy
Look,
Tesla,
the Apple Watch
who knows what.
Give me your sense of how the Apple Watch has actually done.
Apple Watch
is there
Series
traction
2
out there?
has been a big seller. They don't really break that out much, but it's been a big seller. It's been very successful by almost every metric. And then don't forget all of the sales that they do through iTunes and all of the subscriptions to the music and all of the movie selling and all of the sort of digital goods, which of course is a very high margin and very big business. In any other company, it would be a huge business as a standalone.
Do we need to curtail Paul's enthusiasm on Apple, or do you think he's justified in his stance on...
I think it's justified, and more on the last part you touched on is that they're more and more focusing rather on their services than their products. They understand that, look, they're not going to release an iPhone with a toaster attached to it. So where is the growth? It is in their services, the Apple Music, the Apple Play, the iCloud. And just like cell phone companies are realizing that future is in data and not in voice calls, well, what are you spending their data on? It's services just like this. And they're also looking to really expand into emerging markets such as India and launching cheaper products like the iPhone SE, so that they're knowing that obviously the average income in those markets is not the same sort of client they have in North America. So they definitely...
So they're catering appropriately for the market.
Yes.
But I do just want to say that the next iPhone, I don't know it's going to be called the iPhone 8 or the iPhone 10 or something, because it's the 10th anniversary of the iPhone. It's rumored going to have an OLED screen, which means it won't crack. And it's also going to be just a clear glass panel, so it won't have an aluminium back. So it's going to look like the phone of the future. You're going to see, wow, this person's got one of those.
Haven't you just gotten that iPhone 7 and now you're already looking for the next one?
Of course.
Real Apple junkie.
And the iPhone 7, let me tell anyone who's waiting the delay because they've got a 6 and
of course you went and picked it up in New York specifically.
You've got to get a 7 because they're so much faster, the photos are so much better, all of that stuff.
What about the battery life? Does the battery
so
last?
Much better. It charges much faster and it lasts much longer. So much better. That alone, you see.
Mduduzi, are we going hot or not on Apple?
I'm going hot because what Apple has really done as a business is sell you the experience rather than the product. You ask yourself, why do people sleep outside camp overnight when they could just order it online? And it's that. People want to say that I was there, I stood in line for 2 days to get the iPhone 8. So I think that's really what they've done well as a brand, is rather sell the product or the brand association, rather the brand association rather than the product.
Well, you've got the endorsement from Mduduzi.
Definitely hot for me too. Must have in your international portfolio, and we do own them. Trading at an all-time high looks good to me.